Nintendo says it has no plans for a new Switch this year. Nintendo CEO and President Shuntaro Furukawa told investors today that the company has no plans to launch a new model of the Switch in 2020. Speaking as part of a corporate management policy briefing following yesterday's release of financial results, Furukawa instead pointed to today's announcement of the new Animal Crossing branded model. According to the conventional wisdom for dedicated video game platforms, Nintendo Switch should be entering the midway phase of the hardware lifecycle, Furukawa said. But we believe we have built a foundation on which we can pursue further growth opportunities for Nintendo Switch. It wouldn't really be surprising if there were no new Switch hardware this year. The original system came out in early 2017 and received its first significant updates last year with the Switch Lite and a refreshed model with better battery life, both of which were made possible by a more power-efficient version of the NVIDIA chip inside. Anything more substantial would likely require new custom silicon from NVIDIA, which no longer designs general-purpose chips aimed at tablets or other mobile devices. Things could change, of course, but Nintendo seems happy with its current product mix. Furukawa noted how sales of the original Switch were almost flat year-on-year between April and December, with the Switch Lite helping push Nintendo to its improved numbers overall. The Switch now sits at 52.48 million units shipped overall as of the end of 2019, with Furukawa believing the sell-through numbers to be more than 48 million. However, we feel that we have not yet fully communicated the special features and appeal of Nintendo Switch Lite, so we will continue to address this going forward, Furukawa said. Regarding Nintendo Switch, we believe that it is important to continue to communicate the appeal of both Nintendo Switch systems and expand the installed base. Nintendo shares dropped more than 4% after its earnings missed profit estimates. Shares of Nintendo plummeted on Friday afternoon, a day after the company reported operating profit for the October-December quarter that came in below analyst expectations. During Friday afternoon trade, shares of the game maker plunged more than 4%. The decline came after Nintendo announced an operating profit of about 168.7 billion yen, approx. $1.55 billion, in the October-December quarter. That was a more than 6% increase from the same period in the previous year, but it missed mean expectations of 175 billion yen, approx. $1.61 billion, from analyst estimates compiled by Refinitiv, according to Reuters. In the 9 months from April to December 2019, Nintendo sold 12.56 million of its flagship Switch gaming console. Meanwhile, the Switch Lite, a stripped-down version of Switch that's sold at a more affordable price, sold 5.19 million units globally since launching in the US, Japan and Europe on September 20, 2019. Switch, marketed as a hybrid console which enables gamers to play on the go and at home when connected to a TV, has been an important revenue driver for Nintendo. It's helped turn the company's fortunes around after its previous flagship model, the Wii U, was met with lackluster demand. Daniel Ahmed, senior analyst at Nikko Partners, said in a tweet on Thursday that Nintendo's earnings showed the firm was now wholly dependent on Switch and will now need to focus on how to expand its console platform come 2021 and beyond. Amir Anvarzadeh, a market strategist at Asymmetric Advisors, had a more negative take. We think we will see Nintendo's share price continuing to correct over the next 18 months, despite its decent earnings trend, as growth hurdle rates have risen dramatically going into next year. Anvarzadeh said growing competition from the likes of Google's Stadia, Apple Arcade, as well as impending next-generation consoles from Sony and Microsoft are set to provide stiff headwinds for Nintendo. We retain Nintendo firmly in our recommended shorts as we see its share price breaking below last year's lows of Y28K within the next 12 months, Anvarzadeh said in a note. Mario like Mickey? Nintendo banks on profits from characters. Will Mario follow in the steps of Mickey Mouse? Japanese video game maker Nintendo Company is bullish about profiting from its characters by mirroring the historical appeal of the Disney franchise. Will Mario follow in the steps of Mickey Mouse? Japanese video game maker Nintendo Company said Friday it is bullish about profiting from its characters by mirroring the historical appeal of the Disney franchise. We are thinking about the Nintendo brand that way, said the company's game designer, Shigeru Miyamoto. He stressed that Nintendo characters have an extra interactive element because they originate from video games. We want more people to know our characters, not just through games, he said. Nintendo has been banking on its intellectual property. Its own branded store and event space in Tokyo has opened recently, and a Nintendo park is set to open at Universal Studios Japan in Osaka, central Japan, later this year. More are in the works, including in Hollywood and Singapore, according to the company. Kyoto-based Nintendo was upbeat a day after reporting a 29% rise in quarterly profit on solid demand worldwide for the Switch console during the year-end shopping season. With October-December profit at 134 billion yen, $1.2 billion, up from 104 billion yen a year earlier, it raised its full-year Switch sales forecast to 19.5 million machines, up from 18 million projected earlier. The Switch is a hybrid game machine that works both as a console and a tablet. Nintendo said it continues to see opportunities for growth from the handheld Switch Lite, launched in September, which is a compact and lightweight version of the Switch, meant for on-the-go playing. Nintendo chief executive Shuntaro Furukawa said that 4 years after it was launched, the Switch holds promise for more growth that didn't exist for previous consoles that peaked out after a few years. People may buy several Switch Lite machines in addition to the original Switch, he said. Miyamoto said one strength of Nintendo products was that grandparents are playing with their grandchildren, highlighting a wide age range of users. We want to value that great appeal and do something unique, he said of how characters might play out in future games, a Hollywood film and the theme parks. Nintendo has raised its annual profit forecast at 210 billion yen, $1.9 billion, up 8% from the previous year, and better than an earlier projection for 180 billion yen, $1.7 billion profit. Nintendo Switch fans won't get a new console in 2020, Japanese gaming giant Nintendo said quarterly profit jumped 29%, boosted by global demand for its Switch console during the holiday shopping season. Switch is a hybrid game machine that is both a console and a tablet. While Switch is quite popular, there are no plans for a new version in 2020, according to President Shuntaro Furukawa. Nintendo faces competition as Sony prepares to launch its next-generation PlayStation 5, as well as upcoming 5G mobile phones are expected to offer more sophisticated gaming, according to AFP. Furukawa told a Tokyo briefing, the Switch's life cycles and customer bases were different from rival consoles. With October-December profit at 134 billion yen, $1.2 billion, up from 104 billion yen a year earlier, it raised its full-year Switch sales forecast to 19.5 million machines, up from 18 million projected earlier. Nintendo said it continues to see opportunities for growth from the handheld Switch Lite, launched in September, which is a compact and lightweight version of the Switch, meant for on-the-go playing. Furukawa said that 4 years after it was launched, the Switch holds promise for more growth that didn't exist for previous consoles that peaked out after a few years. Nintendo has raised its annual profit forecast to 210 billion yen, $1.9 billion, up 8% from the previous year, and better than an earlier projection for 180 billion yen, $1.7 billion profit. Nintendo says they have no plans to launch a new Switch model during 2020. If you were hoping for that rumored Switch Pro to drop in 2020, you better get out your tissues. Nintendo has flat-out stated that they won't be releasing new Switch hardware this year. The info comes straight from their investor briefing report. Please note that we have no plans to launch a new Nintendo Switch model during 2020. Japan's 59-foot walkable Gundam robot to debut in 2020. Gundam fans who have dreamed of seeing the giant mech suits from the hit anime franchise come to life will get to rejoice because a life-size 59-foot replica of the RX-78-2 Gundam will make its debut in the port of Yokohama later this year. Though it is not the country's first gargantuan Gundam, considering there is a 64-foot statue modeled after the RX-0 Unicorn Gundam in the Japanese island of Odaiba, this functional giant robot will have the capability to walk and move its limbs, according to a report from Time Out. The robot warrior will weigh about 25 tons and will be accompanied by an 82-foot dock tower. Development of the RX-78-2 Gundam began in 2014 with the launch of the Gundam Global Challenge projection, according to Futurism. It will be on display at the grand opening of the Gundam factory, which kicks off on October 1. Tickets go on sale in July. However, superfans may partake in the Gundam Factory Yokohama Special Experience, a limited edition program that will take place before the opening. Participants get a sneak peek at the factory, early entry and special access to an observation deck at the dock tower. When it opens, the Gundam factory will be situated across from the giant Gundam and dock. There will be shops, exhibitions, a cafe and an academy dedicated to the franchise. The factory will close on October 3, 2021. Gundam has been a cash cow for video game developer and toymaker Bandai Namco. Moreover, the 12 series franchise is one of the top 15 highest-grossing media franchises, having generated more than an estimated $20 billion in sales, according to comicbook.com. It's no wonder why Bandai Namco has been trying to purchase the entire Gundam franchise. The company put in a bid for a majority stake in the common stock of Satsu Company Limited, the advertising agency that is the parent company to animation studio Sunrise, which has worked on the popular series. Bandai Namco already owns 22.3% of Satsu Company, according to an IM News network. However, the entertainment company could very well end up the sole owner of Gundam's rights if its bid is successful. Other cult titles under the video game developer include Tamagotchi, Dragon Ball Z, Super Dragon Stars and Disney's Big Hero 6 and Ralph Breaks the Internet. Satellite collision avoided as inactive equipment passes over Pittsburgh. Two inactive satellites crossed paths without incident Wednesday, avoiding a collision that had been considered a possible scenario, according to U.S. Space Command. The command, which falls under the Department of Defense, said that the 18th Space Control Squadron and NASA had been tracking the satellites and projected a less than 3% chance of them colliding over western Pennsylvania. The satellites involved in the near miss are the GGSE-4, left over from a 1967 Air Force test, and the IRAS, an infrared telescope launched in 1983 that ceased operating after 10 months, according to NASA. The telescope found 6 comets in the core of our galaxy, among other discoveries, according to NASA. The 18th Space Control Squadron monitors more than 26,000 objects in orbit in order to protect more than 2,400 active satellites, according to U.S. Space Command. YouTube comments show how platform helps radicalize viewers. Study says YouTube helps radicalize people by leading them toward increasingly extreme content, a study presented at a tech research conference this week shows. A group of researchers from Swiss and Brazilian universities analyzed more than 330,000 videos posted on 349 channels and more than 72 million comments to track how YouTube's algorithmic recommendations suggested increasingly radical videos, moving viewers from milder contrarian content to more extreme videos, embracing racist, anti-Semitic and white supremacist ideologies. The paper, Auditing Radicalization Pathways on YouTube, was presented at the 2020 Conference on Fairness, Accountability and Transparency in Barcelona, Spain. One of the paper's authors, Manuel Horta Ribeiro, said YouTube isn't solely to blame for radicalizing people, but that it is responsible for hosting the extreme communities on its platform, TechCrunch reported. We do find evident traces of user radicalization, and I guess the question asks, why is YouTube responsible for this? Ribeiro said, according to TechCrunch. And I guess the answer would be because many of these communities, they live on YouTube and they have a lot of their content on YouTube, and that's why YouTube is so deeply associated with it. YouTube rolls out changes to children's content. The authors of the study collected data between May and July 2019. During that period, the New York Times published a story detailing one man's experience being radicalized on YouTube, and the company said it was taking steps to address the issues. The platform discontinued its related channels feature in May, and in June it announced it was removing more hateful and supremacist content and making changes to reduce the spread of borderline content like phony miracle cures or flat earth conspiracy videos. Over the past few years, we've invested heavily in the policies, resources and products needed to protect the YouTube community, a YouTube spokesperson said in a written statement. We changed our search and discovery algorithms to ensure more authoritative content is surfaced and labeled prominently in search results and recommendations, and begun reducing recommendations of borderline content and videos that could misinform users in harmful ways. YouTube announces crackdown on harassment, racist, sexist comments. The company said the research didn't reflect the changes it had made. And another study, published in December, claimed the opposite. Its authors concluded that YouTube's algorithm actively discourages viewers from visiting radicalizing or extremist content and instead favors mainstream media and cable news content over independent YouTube channels. But that study, which looked at even more videos, was criticized by some in the tech community because its authors reportedly incorrectly assumed that YouTube's algorithm would not perform differently for logged-in users than anonymous users, so they apparently didn't log in. Princeton computer science professor Arvind Narayanan wrote on Twitter in a response to that study, "That's not how the algorithm works." But it's difficult for anyone to properly study YouTube radicalization because content creators on YouTube are constantly adapting to the algorithm and trends,